Hey everyone, today we're stepping quietly into a world that seems almost frozen in time. Imagine thick stone walls, narrow corridors, and the soft echo of footsteps on worn flagstones. Outside, the countryside stretches in stillness, while inside, life unfolds with slow, deliberate rhythm. We'll explore the daily routines, the rituals, and the small moments of reflection that shaped the lives of monks centuries ago. From the early morning bells to the hushed corridors at dusk, every action is guided by calm purpose. This is a journey into a life of quiet discipline, where simplicity and contemplation define the passing of hours. Join me as we uncover the subtle details, the hidden patterns, and the gentle, enduring rhythm of a medieval monastery. Before dawn touches the horizon, the monastery is already awake. The night sky still stretches dark above the surrounding fields, and a faint silver glow rests along the edge of the eastern hills. Within thick stone walls, narrow corridors hold the lingering coolness of midnight. Candles flicker in iron holders, casting soft halos against plastered surfaces. The air is still, layered with the scent of beeswax and aged timber. The first bell sounds gently. Its tone is neither urgent nor harsh. It carries through cloisters and sleeping chambers with measured steadiness, rising into the rafters before settling into silence once more. The vibration seems to move through the stone itself, touching every corner of the enclosed world. The monks rise from their simple beds. Each sleeping space is modest: a wooden frame, a thin mattress stuffed with straw or wool, a folded blanket, perhaps a small chest for personal belongings. The walls are undecorated. A single narrow window, often unglazed, admits the faintest suggestion of pre-dawn air. Comfort is limited by intention. The room exists not to invite indulgence, but to provide rest sufficient for prayer and labor. Sandaled feet touch cold floors. Robes are drawn over shoulders. Cowls are lifted. There is little unnecessary movement. The routine has been repeated countless times, through winter frost and summer heat alike. Even the youngest novices learn the rhythm quickly, guided not by conversation but by example. They move toward the church in silence. The cloister walk, sheltered by arched arcades, surrounds a central garden. At this hour the garden is indistinct, its herbs and low shrubs barely visible in shadow. Dew gathers on leaves. The faintest breeze stirs the tops of nearby trees beyond the outer wall. The church interior is vast compared to the cells. Stone pillars rise in orderly rows, supporting ribbed vaults that curve overhead. The space feels both protective and expansive. Candles burn before the altar. Their light catches on polished metal and carved wood. Shadows collect in the higher reaches of the ceiling. The monks take their places in choir stalls lining the nave. Carved seats, worn smooth by generations, fold upward when standing and lower during prayer. Books rest on lecterns, their pages illuminated by careful hands long ago. The parchment carries the quiet weight of tradition. The first office of the day begins. Voices rise in unison, unhurried and steady. Chant unfolds in measured cadence, weaving through the stone chamber. The sound does not rush, it settles into the architecture, filling corners and curving along arches. Each note lingers slightly before fading. Outside, darkness thins. Morning approaches gradually, unnoticed at first by those absorbed in prayer. The rhythm of psalms shapes the passage of time more clearly than the movement of the sun. Words memorized through repetition anchor the mind. After the final cadence of the early office, silence resumes. The monks bow and depart in quiet order. Some return briefly to their cells. Others remain for private reflection. The day is only beginning. When daylight strengthens, the monastery reveals its full arrangement. At the center stands the cloister garth, a square of cultivated earth bordered by covered walkways. Herbs for cooking and medicine grow in orderly beds. Lavender releases fragrance when brushed lightly. Sage and rosemary thrive in carefully tended soil. A small fountain may occupy the middle, its steady trickle a constant companion to contemplation. Beyond the cloister lies the refectory. Long wooden tables extend beneath a high ceiling supported by beams darkened with age. Benches flank each side. A raised platform at one end allows a reader to stand during meals. The walls are simple, perhaps adorned with a painted crucifix or a modest mural. Nearby, the kitchen stirs with early activity. Lay brothers prepare bread, porridge, and simple fare according to the season. The hearth glows steadily. Iron pots hang from hooks. The scent of baking grain drifts through corridors, mingling with smoke that rises toward an opening in the roof. Breakfast is taken in silence. The monks enter in orderly procession. Each finds a place. Bowls are set before them. During the meal, one voice reads from sacred or instructive texts. The words fall gently across the hall, filling the quiet space between spoon and bowl. Food is modest but sufficient. Bread baked from coarse flour, perhaps a thin broth flavored with herbs from the garden. On certain days, cheese or fruit may appear. Meat is rare, reserved for particular seasons or for those who are ill. After the meal, work begins. The monastery is not only a house of prayer, it is also a place of labor. Fields stretch beyond the walls, cultivated carefully. Some monks tend crops, guiding plows drawn by oxen through damp soil. Others prune orchards or gather vegetables. The changing seasons determine the tasks. In spring, seedlings are planted in neat rows. In summer, irrigation channels are maintained to preserve moisture. Autumn brings harvest, when grain is cut and bundled. Winter shifts focus inward, toward maintenance and study. Within the walls, other duties await. The scriptorium is a chamber set aside for copying manuscripts. Tall windows admit generous light during daylight hours. Desks are arranged in rows, each equipped with ink, quills, and prepared parchment. The room carries the faint scent of ink and scraped vellum. Here, patience is essential. A single page may require hours of careful attention. Letters are formed with precision. Margins are measured. Initial capitals receive intricate decoration in vibrant pigments made from crushed minerals and plants. Gold leaf may be applied with delicate breath and steady hands. Silence in the scriptorium is profound. The only sounds are the scratch of quill against parchment and the occasional shift of wood as someone adjusts posture. The act of copying becomes meditation. Words pass through mind and hand, shaping both memory and discipline. Elsewhere, brothers assigned to hospitality prepare guest quarters. Travelers sometimes seek lodging within monastic walls. Pilgrims journeying to distant shrines rest briefly before continuing onward. The guest house remains separate from the cloister, preserving enclosure while offering welcome. Water is drawn from wells. Buckets descend with measured care. The rope creaks softly. Clear water rises to fill basins used for cooking, washing, and brewing. Hygiene is practiced according to the customs of the time, shaped by climate and available resources. Midday approaches. The bell sounds again, calling the community back to prayer. Work pauses. Tools are set aside. The transition from labor to liturgy is seamless, as though both belong to a single breath. Sunlight now streams across the cloister. Patterns of shadow shift along stone floors. The garden's colors become vivid beneath open sky. Bees hover near flowering plants. The fountain continues its quiet rhythm. Within the church, chant resumes. The cadence differs slightly from the early hours, reflecting the movement of the day. Voices carry warmth strengthened by shared effort. The atmosphere remains tranquil, yet grounded in physical exertion. After prayer, the principal meal is served. Vegetables harvested that morning may appear in stew. Lentils simmered slowly provide sustenance. Bread is broken and distributed. Again, reading accompanies the meal, reinforcing learning within ordinary routine. Following dinner, a brief period of rest may be permitted. Some withdraw to cells. Others stroll along the cloister, hands folded within sleeves. The garden invites contemplation. Leaves tremble under gentle wind. Clouds pass overhead in slow procession. Afternoon tasks resume. Repairing tools, mending robes, tending bees kept in woven skeps near orchard edges. Honey is collected carefully, both for sweetness and for candle making. Wax is precious, shaping the light that guides night offices. As the sun begins its descent, shadows lengthen across fields. Birdsong softens. The rhythm of labor eases. Another bell summons the monks once more. Evening prayer gathers the day into gratitude and reflection. The church interior glows under candlelight. Daylight fades from windows, leaving only flickering illumination. The chants at this hour carry a slightly deeper resonance, shaped by fatigue and fulfillment. Supper is simple. Perhaps a portion of bread and warm broth. Conversation remains absent. The reader's voice continues its steady presence, offering wisdom drawn from scripture or the writings of earlier monks whose lives have long concluded. Darkness settles fully around the monastery. Gates are secured. Lamps are trimmed. The final office approaches. Night prayer unfolds in quiet reverence. Words are fewer now, the tone subdued. When the service ends, silence deepens. The monks return to their cells. The corridors grow still. Only the faint hum of wind along the outer walls and the distant call of nocturnal creatures break the quiet. Above, stars shine over fields and forests. Within the enclosure, peace rests heavily yet gently, as though the stone itself participates in the rhythm of devotion. Thus concludes a single day. Yet tomorrow, before dawn, the bell will sound again, and the cycle will begin anew, steady as the turning of seasons, unremarkable in its repetition, profound in its constancy. Beyond the daily rhythm of prayer and labor lies a deeper structure shaping monastic existence, the rule. Every monastery follows a written guide that governs conduct, worship, work, and even the smallest gestures of daily life. For many communities in medieval Europe, this framework is drawn from the Rule of Saint Benedict, composed centuries earlier yet still alive in practice. Its chapters address humility, obedience, moderation, and communal harmony with careful detail. The text is read aloud regularly so that its guidance remains present in memory. The rule does not impose severity for its own sake. It establishes balance. Time is divided carefully between contemplation and effort, between silence and necessary speech, between private reflection and shared obligation. Through this ordered structure, the monastery becomes a living organism whose members function as interdependent parts. At the head of the community stands the abbot. His position carries responsibility rather than privilege. He oversees spiritual discipline, administers property, and ensures that charity extends beyond the walls. Election to this role often follows years of demonstrated steadiness. Leadership within a monastery demands restraint, patience, and discernment. The abbot's quarters are modest compared to noble residences beyond the cloister. Though slightly larger than ordinary cells, they remain simple. A writing desk, a bed, a shelf for manuscripts, nothing more is required. Beneath him serve the prior and other officers entrusted with specific duties. The cellarer manages supplies, ensuring that grain stores remain secure and that livestock are accounted for. The infirmarian tends to those weakened by illness. The cantor oversees liturgical chant, preserving melodic accuracy across generations. Each role supports the community's continuity. Young novices enter the monastery with uncertainty and expectation. Their training extends over years. At first they observe more than they act, learning gestures and schedules through quiet imitation. Gradually they assume responsibilities, copying manuscripts, tending gardens, assisting in the kitchen. Instruction occurs primarily through example and repetition. Clothing reinforces simplicity. The habit, usually of undyed wool, varies slightly by region. In colder climates it is thick and coarse, designed to withstand winter chill. In warmer lands it is lighter, yet still plain. A leather belt or cord secures the garment. Sandals protect the feet, though during severe cold additional wrapping may be required. Hair is cut in a distinctive tonsure, symbolizing renunciation of vanity. The gesture is outwardly visible, yet its meaning lies inward. Outside the enclosure, the surrounding countryside continues its own patterns. Villagers rise before sunrise, tending livestock and fields. Though separated by walls, the monastery remains connected to this broader world. Rents and donations support its sustenance. In return, monks offer counsel, prayer, and occasional medical knowledge drawn from preserved texts. The infirmary within the monastery is a quiet chamber set apart from common areas. Beds are arranged with greater spacing to reduce contagion. Simple remedies derived from herbs cultivated in the garden are prepared carefully. Infusions of chamomile soothe restlessness. Salves made from calendula ease skin ailments. Knowledge of healing, though limited by the science of the era, reflects attentive observation. Illness disrupts routine gently rather than abruptly. Offices are attended as strength permits. Others compensate when one is weakened. Compassion forms part of discipline. Seasonal changes bring subtle shifts to monastic life. In winter, daylight hours shorten significantly. Candles become essential even during what would otherwise be working hours. Cold penetrates stone corridors despite layered garments. Breath becomes visible in unheated spaces. Water in basins may freeze overnight, requiring careful thawing before use. The scriptorium grows quieter during such months, as fingers stiffen and ink thickens in chill air. Manuscript production slows but does not cease. Determination persists despite discomfort. Spring introduces renewal. Fields beyond the walls soften under thawing soil. Plowing resumes with steady rhythm. Seeds saved from previous harvests are sown carefully. The orchard blossoms, scattering pale petals along pathways. Bees emerge with renewed vigor. Monastic observance marks these transitions through the liturgical calendar. Lent brings fasting and increased contemplation. Easter fills the church with heightened ceremony and brighter ornamentation. The interplay between agricultural cycle and sacred time deepens awareness of continuity. Summer introduces labor of a different intensity. Heat accumulates beneath woolen habits. Work in fields demands endurance. Sweat darkens fabric. Yet longer daylight allows extended activity. Grain ripens under open sky, promising sustenance for months ahead. Harvest season becomes both practical and symbolic. Bundles of wheat are gathered and stored in granaries protected against dampness. Threshing floors echo with measured movement as grain is separated from chaff. Gratitude accompanies physical exertion. Autumn settles gradually. Leaves in nearby woodlands shift color before falling in soft layers. Cooler air refreshes cloister walks. Apples and pears are collected from orchard trees, preserved through drying or storage in cellars. Throughout these cycles, manuscripts accumulate within the library. Shelves carved into walls hold volumes bound in leather. Some contain sacred texts. Others preserve classical writings inherited from earlier civilizations. The monastery functions as guardian of knowledge, transmitting works that might otherwise vanish. Illuminated pages reflect devotion not only to content but to beauty. Pigments derived from lapis lazuli, malachite, and ochre create vivid hues. Even in modest communities, care is taken to enhance significant passages with decorative initials or marginal illustrations. Education extends beyond copying. Certain monks devote themselves to study of theology, philosophy, and astronomy. Observations of stars assist in calculating feast days. Charts drawn by candlelight record positions of celestial bodies across seasons. The monastery also maintains vineyards in suitable regions. Grapevines stretch along terraced slopes, pruned with precision. Harvested grapes are crushed using wooden presses. Wine ferments slowly in barrels stored in cool cellars. It serves both liturgical function and daily nourishment in measured quantity. Livestock graze in adjacent meadows. Sheep provide wool for garments. Cows yield milk for cheese and butter. Chickens offer eggs. Care of animals requires attentiveness equal to that given to crops. Silence remains a defining element. Speech is restricted outside necessary contexts. Communication often occurs through subtle gestures learned during novitiate. This quiet does not feel oppressive, rather, it fosters awareness of interior thought. At designated hours, limited conversation may be permitted in specific areas. Such moments carry a quality of deliberateness, as though words themselves are treated with care. The cloister garden evolves gradually into a space of layered meaning. Each plant serves purpose. Some heal. Others flavor meals. A few hold symbolic associations drawn from scripture. Pathways form a square around the central plot, inviting slow pacing. Rain falling upon the tiled roof produces a steady rhythm. Water channels guide runoff into cisterns. The sound of droplets striking stone becomes part of the monastery's auditory landscape. Occasionally, political events ripple outward to affect even secluded communities. A change in regional authority may alter land rights. Taxes might increase or decrease depending on alliances. Letters delivered by mounted couriers carry news of distant conflicts or royal decrees. Yet within the walls, response remains measured. Prayer continues according to schedule. Fields must still be tended regardless of external turbulence. The monastery may also serve as refuge during times of instability. Villagers seeking temporary shelter gather within outer courtyards. Hospitality, though structured, extends compassionately when need arises. Artisans occasionally reside nearby. Blacksmiths repair tools. Masons assist with maintenance of walls or roofs. Their presence introduces different rhythms of sound, hammer striking metal, chisel against stone. Maintenance of architecture demands ongoing attention. Mortar erodes gradually. Timber beams require inspection. Roof tiles shift under wind. The community addresses such tasks methodically, ensuring longevity. Time passes quietly yet decisively. Novices mature into full members. Elders age, their steps slower along cloister paths. Memory accumulates in subtle ways, through worn floor stones, polished wood, softened corners. Burials occur within designated grounds adjacent to the church. Simple markers denote resting places. Names fade slowly over decades. The cycle of entry and departure continues without spectacle. The monastery stands as both sanctuary and workshop of the spirit. Its existence depends not upon dramatic events but upon steadfast repetition. Within these walls, days unfold with gentle constancy, shaped by rule, season, and shared intention. As evening once again descends and lamps are lit in narrow corridors, the community gathers for the final office. Voices rise softly beneath vaulted ceilings. Outside, fields darken under twilight. Within, quiet resilience endures, unhurried, deliberate, sustained by devotion woven into every hour. Beyond prayer, labor, and seasonal rhythm, the monastery sustains another dimension of life shaped by scholarship and preservation. Within a chamber set slightly apart from the scriptorium lies the armorium, a carefully guarded repository where manuscripts are stored under controlled conditions. Wooden cupboards line the walls, their doors reinforced with iron bands. Inside rest volumes copied across generations, some produced within the monastery itself, others acquired through exchange with distant houses. Books are rare and valuable objects. Each manuscript represents months, sometimes years, of disciplined effort. Parchment prepared from animal skins must be scraped, stretched, and dried before ink ever touches its surface. Margins are ruled with faint lines to guide text placement. Every page embodies patience. Certain monks devote themselves to binding. They stitch gatherings of parchment into sturdy codices, attaching covers of wood wrapped in leather. Clasps secure pages tightly to prevent warping. Decoration may be minimal or elaborate, depending on the text's importance. Illumination requires a separate skill. Pigments are mixed carefully with egg tempera or gum arabic. Gold leaf is applied with breath and gentle pressure. Designs are drawn from memory, tradition, or imagination, interlacing vines, geometric patterns, small figures integrated into margins. Even modest houses strive for clarity and harmony in these embellishments. The preservation of ancient texts becomes one of the monastery's quiet legacies. Classical works on grammar, rhetoric, and natural philosophy survive because monks consider them worthy of copying. While theological writings remain central, secular knowledge is not entirely neglected. Astronomy aids calculation of liturgical feasts. Agricultural treatises inform crop management. Education extends inward as well. New members learn Latin through repetitive reading of psalms and commentaries. Pronunciation is corrected gently by more experienced voices during communal recitation. Literacy is both spiritual discipline and practical necessity. In addition to the library, the monastery maintains a small archive. Charters documenting land grants, correspondence with neighboring houses, and records of donations are stored in sealed chests. Wax seals hang from cords, bearing impressions of local rulers or ecclesiastical authorities. These documents safeguard rights and obligations. The chapter house functions as a place of governance. Each morning, after an office of prayer, the community assembles here. Stone benches line the walls. Light enters through tall windows set higher than eye level. During these gatherings, sections of the rule are read aloud, followed by reflection upon conduct and duties. Discipline, when required, is administered with restraint. Corrections are intended to restore balance rather than impose humiliation. Minor faults may result in additional prayers or temporary withdrawal from communal activities. The emphasis rests upon humility and growth. Monastic architecture reflects this ethos of ordered life. The cloister remains central, yet beyond it lie workshops dedicated to specific crafts. A bakehouse stands apart from main buildings to reduce fire risk. A brewhouse produces ale suitable for daily consumption, safer in many cases than untreated water. The scent of malt and yeast drifts occasionally through open doors. In regions where wool production thrives, a fulling room may exist. Cloth woven from monastery sheep is washed and thickened by controlled agitation in water mixed with natural cleansing agents. The process requires strength and attention. Water management proves essential. Channels divert streams toward mills that grind grain into flour. Wooden wheels turn steadily under flowing current, converting motion into energy. Maintenance of these mechanisms demands mechanical understanding passed from one generation to the next. In colder climates, monastic houses sometimes incorporate heated rooms known as kale factories. These chambers provide limited respite during harsh winters. A central hearth radiates warmth, though fuel must be conserved carefully. Such spaces are used sparingly and often serve communal reading or mending activities. The infirmary garden expands beyond culinary herbs. Plants with medicinal properties are cultivated deliberately: valerian for calming, comfort for wounds, mint for digestion. Knowledge of their preparation is recorded in handwritten manuals, annotated with observations from experience. Pilgrimage routes occasionally bring travelers carrying relics or devotional objects. The monastery may host such visitors briefly, offering shelter and food. In exchange, news of distant lands arrives. Stories of cities, deserts, or coastal ports filter into cloistered awareness, broadening imagination without disrupting enclosure. Not all monks remain permanently within one house. Some are sent to establish daughter communities in remote areas. Others travel to attend synods or consult with bishops. Their journeys extend monastic influence while reinforcing bonds across regions. Artistic expression appears not only in manuscripts but in architecture itself. Capitals atop cloister columns bear carvings, stylized leaves, symbolic animals, abstract motifs. Though understated, these details reflect aesthetic care. Stone becomes canvas for restrained creativity. Bell towers rise above roofs, marking hours audibly across surrounding countryside. The casting of bells requires specialized skill. Molten metal is poured into molds prepared meticulously. Once cooled, each bell carries a distinct tone. Their sound orders daily activity far beyond monastery walls. Weather alters soundscape and atmosphere. Fog dampens distant echoes. Rain on slate roofs creates soft percussion. Snow muffles footsteps in the courtyard, rendering even routine movement hushed. Inside the church, light changes according to season. High windows admit slanting rays in winter, illuminating suspended dust motes. In summer, brightness lingers late into evening offices. Candles remain constant companions, yet daylight transforms perception. Monastic diet adjusts with agricultural success and scarcity. During abundant years, vegetables are plentiful. During lean seasons, portions diminish. Fasting days punctuate the calendar, reinforcing detachment from excess. The rhythm of copying manuscripts sometimes intersects with liturgical reform. Changes in chant notation or calendar adjustments require revision of service books. Margins contain annotations reflecting evolving practice. Over decades, architectural additions accumulate. A new chapel might be constructed to honor a patron saint. An expanded dormitory accommodates increased membership. Stone from local quarries is shaped with tools sharpened repeatedly on whetstones. Construction proceeds gradually. Scaffolding rises against outer walls. Lime mortar cures slowly. Patience governs each phase. The resulting structure blends seamlessly with older sections, creating a layered appearance that mirrors historical development. Music evolves subtly within these walls. Modes of chant shift in emphasis. Melodic ornamentation varies by region. The cantor ensures uniformity while allowing slight inflections shaped by communal voice. In times of famine or plague beyond monastery boundaries, the community responds according to capacity. Stores of grain may be distributed carefully to nearby villagers. The infirmarian prepares remedies for those seeking assistance. Compassion extends outward, though resources remain finite. Death, when it arrives within the monastery, is approached with solemn steadiness. The dying brother receives prayer and gentle attendance. After burial, his name is inscribed in necrology, read annually in remembrance. Memory becomes part of communal fabric. Manuscripts sometimes include marginal notes written decades after original copying. Later hands add clarification, commentary, or correction. Thus texts evolve organically within the same physical volume. Natural surroundings continue to shape experience. Forests bordering monastery lands provide timber and fuel. Rivers reflect sky and stone alike. Birds nest in eaves, untroubled by human presence. Time within the monastery feels measured not by novelty but by repetition. Days resemble one another outwardly, yet interior growth unfolds quietly. The slow accumulation of discipline, study, and shared labor shapes character gradually. As evening approaches once more, light dims in the cloister. Wind moves gently through arcades. A bell signals transition to night prayer. The church gathers its voices once again beneath vaulted ceilings. Outside, distant stars begin to appear. Within, candles cast gentle halos across carved wood and stone. The monastery rests within its enclosure, sustained by rule, memory, and unbroken continuity. Another day yields to darkness, not with spectacle, but with calm assurance that the pattern will continue, steady, deliberate, and enduring. Over generations, the monastery's presence reshapes the surrounding landscape in ways subtle yet enduring. Fields once divided irregularly become measured according to planned rotation. Boundaries are marked with low stone walls or hedgerows cultivated deliberately for both protection and forage. Paths connecting outer farms to the cloister are hardened with gravel carried from nearby riverbeds, allowing passage even during heavy rain. Agricultural experimentation gradually becomes part of the monastic vocation. Selective breeding of livestock improves wool quality and milk yield. Careful observation of soil fertility leads to adjustments in planting sequences. Records kept in modest ledgers track yields year by year, creating an archive of seasonal variation and long-term climate shifts. These observations prove invaluable during unpredictable cycles of weather. A sequence of cold summers, perhaps linked to distant volcanic eruptions unknown to local understanding, diminishes harvests. The monastery responds by rationing stores and reinforcing preservation methods, drying apples, salting fish, storing beans in sealed containers layered with straw. Trade relationships expand cautiously. Caravans traveling between inland towns and coastal markets sometimes stop at the monastery gate. In exchange for surplus wool, honey, or illuminated texts, the house acquires items not produced locally, fine parchment from distant regions, pigments imported from southern mines, iron tools forged with techniques unfamiliar to village smiths. Coins occasionally pass through monastic hands, though wealth remains measured less in currency than in land and resources. Royal charters confirm property rights during periods of political uncertainty. A shift in regional power may require renewal of allegiance to a new ruler. Seals affixed to documents preserve legitimacy amid changing dynasties. Beyond the walls, geopolitical currents move quietly but decisively. Conflicts between neighboring principalities alter trade routes. News of distant crusades filters slowly through ecclesiastical correspondence. Some younger members, stirred by reports of sacred campaigns, request permission to travel eastward. The abbot weighs such petitions carefully, balancing zeal with communal stability. Within the church itself, artistic style begins to evolve. Earlier Romanesque solidity yields gradually to pointed arches and ribbed vaulting characteristic of emerging Gothic architecture. Construction of a new transept introduces higher ceilings and larger windows, inviting increased light into the sanctuary. Stained glass panels, though modest compared to grand cathedrals, depict scenes from scripture rendered in deep blues and reds. When sunlight passes through colored panes, the interior transforms into a mosaic of shifting hues. Figures carved in stone now appear animated by refracted brilliance. Visual storytelling complements written word, offering instruction to illiterate visitors. The monastery school begins to accept not only novices but select boys from noble families seeking education. These pupils study grammar, logic, and basic arithmetic. Instruction extends to music theory and the computation of feast days according to complex calendrical systems. Exposure to disciplined routine shapes their future leadership. With growth comes the need for clearer administrative structure. The cellarer oversees provisions and supply chains. The sacristan maintains liturgical objects. The infirmarian records ailments and treatments. Responsibilities become specialized, reflecting expanding complexity. Monastic correspondence becomes increasingly sophisticated. Letters exchanged with other houses discuss theological questions, agricultural innovations, and even astronomical observations. A recorded eclipse prompts reflection on divine order and cosmic mechanics. Marginal sketches illustrate phases of the moon. Travelers from distant monasteries bring alternative customs. Variations in chant notation are compared carefully. Differences in fasting practices prompt thoughtful discussion. While core principles remain consistent, diversity within unity enriches understanding. Libraries continue to expand. Scholastic works influenced by universities emerging in cities like Paris begin to circulate. Treatises by thinkers such as Thomas Aquinas reach the shelves, introducing systematic theological reasoning that complements contemplative tradition. Engagement with such texts deepens intellectual life. Commentaries are written in margins. Debates unfold within the quiet of the chapter house, guided by established rules of discourse that prioritize clarity and humility. Thought becomes a form of devotion. Meanwhile, technological refinement subtly transforms daily tasks. Improved plow designs allow deeper turning of soil. Water-driven hammers in nearby settlements inspire experimentation with mechanical innovation. The monastery does not become a center of industrial change, yet it observes and adapts prudently. Illnesses periodically sweep across regions. During outbreaks resembling the Great Plague that would later devastate Europe, fear ripples outward from urban centers. Though rural communities sometimes escape initial waves, isolation proves only partial defense. The monastery tightens contact with outsiders, emphasizing hygiene within limited contemporary understanding. Mortality alters demographics. Vacant places in choir stalls remind survivors of fragility. Recruitment intensifies to sustain communal life. Younger novices assume responsibilities earlier than anticipated. Despite hardship, artistic expression persists. A newly commissioned altarpiece depicts not triumph but endurance, figures rendered with solemn dignity rather than dramatic flourish. The aesthetic reflects maturity shaped by loss. Winter landscapes acquire sharper clarity. Frost patterns trace delicate geometry across cloister windows. Breath forms visible clouds during early morning prayer. Silence becomes nearly absolute when snow blankets surrounding fields. In spring, renewal feels tangible. Orchards blossom in pale white and pink. Bees return to hives positioned near herb gardens. Streams swell with meltwater, powering mills more vigorously. Time begins to be measured not solely by bells but by mechanical clocks emerging in larger towns. Though the monastery continues to rely primarily on traditional timekeeping, awareness of technological innovation broadens perspective. A visiting artisan demonstrates gear mechanisms that regulate motion with surprising precision. Spiritual contemplation adapts subtly to changing eras. Mystical writings circulating from regions influenced by figures like Meister Eckhart encourage inward reflection, emphasizing divine presence within the soul. These texts are read cautiously yet appreciatively, integrated into established frameworks. Beyond Europe, distant events ripple faintly through monastic awareness. Reports of flourishing scholarship in places such as Cordoba reach through translated manuscripts preserving classical philosophy. Encounters between cultures, though indirect, expand intellectual horizons. Cartographic curiosity grows. A simple mappa mundi is drawn within the scriptorium, depicting continents according to medieval cosmology. Jerusalem occupies symbolic center. Edges of the map blend geography with theology, reflecting worldview rather than empirical measurement. Weather anomalies continue to shape daily adaptation. Heavy rains erode pathways, requiring repair. Occasional drought necessitates deeper wells. The community learns resilience through incremental adjustment rather than dramatic overhaul. Artisanship extends to metalwork. Chalice stems are engraved with delicate patterns. Candlesticks are balanced carefully to prevent tipping during long vigils. Each object crafted within the monastery bears subtle marks of its maker. Pilgrims sometimes leave behind tokens, small carvings, rosaries, scraps of parchment inscribed with prayers. These items accumulate in chests near the sacristy, forming a quiet archive of human longing intersecting with monastic stillness. Generational transition becomes visible in architecture and demeanor. Elder monks walk more slowly beneath cloister arches once traversed briskly in youth. Younger members introduce fresh energy, yet absorb inherited wisdom through patient mentorship. Political upheaval occasionally approaches monastery gates. Armies marching between territories require temporary lodging or provisions. Neutrality is maintained as far as possible, though allegiances must sometimes be clarified carefully to avoid suspicion. Defensive features, though minimal, exist. Outer walls are thickened slightly during uncertain periods. Storage rooms are concealed discreetly. Prudence coexists with trust. Cultural shifts accelerate toward later centuries. Humanist scholarship begins to question certain inherited assumptions. Manuscripts of classical antiquity gain renewed prominence. Monks encounter texts emphasizing rhetoric and moral philosophy independent of strictly theological frameworks. The invention of movable type, pioneered by Johannes Gutenberg in Mainz, gradually transforms the world of books. Printed volumes appear in nearby towns, their uniform letters contrasting with handwritten variability. The monastery contemplates implications carefully. Copying remains an act of devotion, yet printed texts promise broader dissemination of knowledge. Some fear erosion of contemplative craftsmanship. Centuries advance with a quiet inevitability that no stone wall can entirely resist. Beyond the cloister, the world enters an era of expanding horizons. Ocean routes redraw mental maps. Distant continents, once imagined only through allegory, begin to take form in more precise outlines. Reports of voyages funded by crowns and merchants reach even secluded religious houses, carried in printed pamphlets and scholarly treatises. Within the monastery library, new volumes appear describing lands across the Atlantic and passages around southern capes. The tone of these accounts differs from earlier cosmological diagrams. Measurements grow more exact. Coordinates replace symbolic orientation. Curiosity shifts toward navigation, trade, and empirical observation. Astronomical tables become increasingly refined. Improved instruments, astrolabes, quadrants, eventually telescopes, alter perception of the heavens. News of observations associated with figures like Galileo Galilei and Johannes Kepler circulates through scholarly correspondence. Traditional cosmology is reconsidered carefully, sometimes cautiously, yet never dismissed without reflection. Within the Church, sermons begin to incorporate references to expanding knowledge of creation. Nature is contemplated not only as symbol but as system governed by discernible patterns. Monastic scholars compare scriptural exegesis with emerging scientific frameworks, seeking harmony rather than opposition. Political authority consolidates further during early modern centuries. Centralized monarchies exert greater influence over ecclesiastical institutions. Administrative reforms require accurate inventories of land holdings and revenues. Surveyors traverse monastery fields with measuring chains and drafting tools, recording boundaries in unprecedented detail. Taxation increases gradually. Others perceive opportunity for preservation and study on an unprecedented scale. The scriptorium continues its work, though awareness of change lingers. Reformation currents eventually stir across Europe. Debates over doctrine reach even secluded communities. Loyalty to tradition is reaffirmed within these walls, while acknowledging that religious landscape beyond them is shifting. Political consolidation of emerging nation-states alters ecclesiastical structures. Royal oversight increases in certain regions. Monastic lands are surveyed and taxed with greater precision. Autonomy narrows incrementally. Yet daily rhythm persists. Chant rises beneath vaults. Seeds are planted and harvested. Manuscripts are opened and read. Storms batter roofs, which are repaired with slate and timber. Bells continue to mark hours, though generations have passed since their casting. The monastery stands not unchanged, but continuously adapting within continuity. Its stones hold memory of countless footsteps. Its gardens reflect centuries of cultivation. Its library gathers voices spanning ages. As twilight once again settles across fields shaped by centuries of care, the cloister receives lengthening shadows. Candles are lit against encroaching darkness. Pages turn softly in lamplight. Breath and prayer merge with quiet air. History presses forward beyond monastery walls, carrying innovation, conflict, and transformation. Within, steady devotion remains, a measured response to passing centuries, neither resisting time nor surrendering to it entirely, but inhabiting each moment with deliberate attention. Financial pressure compels some communities to lease portions of their estates. Tenant farmers cultivate plots under contractual arrangements formalized in legal language far more intricate than medieval charters. Cultural transformation accelerates in urban centers. Baroque architecture flourishes, characterized by dramatic curves and elaborate ornamentation. Though the monastery maintains architectural restraint, occasional renovations reflect stylistic shifts, altars adorned with gilded carvings, ceilings painted with luminous frescoes depicting celestial ascent. Music within the liturgy evolves as well. Polyphonic compositions influence choir arrangements. Harmonies become layered, weaving multiple vocal lines into intricate structures. Manuscript choir books expand in size to accommodate complex notation. Education broadens during the Enlightenment. Philosophical works emphasizing reason and natural rights enter the library. Texts by thinkers such as John Locke and Voltaire appear among theological volumes. Monks engage these writings critically, aware that intellectual currents beyond cloister walls question long-standing authority. Scientific inquiry becomes increasingly empirical. Botanical classification systems are adopted in the infirmary garden. Plants are catalogued according to emerging taxonomies rather than solely medicinal function. Specimens are pressed between parchment sheets and labeled with Latin nomenclature. Political upheaval eventually reaches a decisive moment. Revolutions erupt in various regions, reshaping relationships between church and state. In places like France, monastic properties face confiscation. Religious communities experience dissolution or forced secularization. If the monastery lies within territories influenced by such movements, uncertainty becomes palpable. Archives are reviewed anxiously. Precious manuscripts are hidden or transferred discreetly to safer locations. Some houses close entirely, others survive through adaptation and negotiation. Industrialization alters surrounding landscapes profoundly. Steam engines replace water wheels in distant towns. Railways carve lines across countryside, connecting markets previously separated by days of travel. The monastery hears the faint whistle of locomotives echoing across fields once dominated solely by birdsong. Agricultural practice modernizes. Mechanical threshers reduce manual labor. Fertilizers derived from industrial processes increase yields. Traditional crop rotations are adjusted according to scientific recommendations. The community confronts questions regarding modernization. Electric lighting, introduced gradually, challenges reliance on candlelight. Debate arises over whether such innovation disrupts contemplative atmosphere or enhances study during long winter evenings. Communication accelerates through telegraph and later telephone. News arrives rapidly. Wars once perceived as distant events now feel immediate. Monks gather around newspapers reporting conflicts on continental scale. The 19th century witnesses renewed religious revival in certain regions. Romantic appreciation for medieval spirituality inspires restoration of ancient monastic sites. Architectural conservation becomes a deliberate effort. Damaged cloisters are repaired using historically informed methods. In other territories, secular governance maintains strict oversight. Monastic vows continue, yet under regulatory frameworks requiring registration and transparency. The balance between autonomy and accountability grows increasingly complex. Global missionary movements expand outward. Some members volunteer for service abroad, traveling to Africa, Asia, or the Americas. Letters sent home describe climates vastly different from temperate Europe, humid forests, arid deserts, bustling colonial cities. These accounts reshape internal perception of universality. Faith is understood not solely within local culture but as part of a broader human tapestry spanning continents. Technological innovation transforms scholarship. Printing presses evolve into large-scale publishing houses. Eventually, typewriters and photographic reproduction enable rapid duplication of texts. The monastery acquires printed critical editions of scripture annotated with linguistic analysis derived from ancient manuscripts. Archaeological discoveries capture scholarly attention. Excavations in regions such as Pompeii reveal preserved urban life beneath volcanic ash. Artifacts challenge simplistic narratives of antiquity. Monastic historians incorporate such findings into lectures and writings. 20th century conflicts cast long shadows. World wars devastate cities and countryside alike. Monasteries sometimes serve as hospitals or refugee shelters. Bombardment threatens centuries-old structures. Stained glass shatters under shock waves, requiring painstaking restoration. Economic hardship follows wartime destruction. Communities rely once again on subsistence agriculture and careful rationing. Gardens expand to ensure food security. Beekeeping and small-scale dairy production regain prominence. After devastation comes reconstruction. International cooperation fosters peace initiatives. Ecumenical dialogue encourages conversation across denominational lines previously marked by division. The monastery participates quietly in these efforts, hosting conferences focused on reconciliation and ethical responsibility. Advances in medicine alter life expectancy. Modern antibiotics reduce mortality from infections once fatal. The infirmary integrates contemporary treatments while preserving herbal knowledge as complementary practice. Education becomes increasingly accessible to broader populations. Universities expand enrollment beyond elite classes. The monastery school adapts, offering retreats and seminars rather than primary instruction for youth. Cultural secularization advances steadily. Fewer young individuals choose monastic vocation. Recruitment declines in many regions. Aging communities confront sustainability challenges. Some monasteries consolidate resources through federation. Shared administration reduces financial strain. Properties are repurposed partially as guesthouses, welcoming lay visitors seeking retreat from urban intensity. Environmental awareness grows during late 20th century. Industrial pollution prompts reflection on stewardship. The monastery implements sustainable agriculture, organic cultivation, renewable energy through solar panels discreetly positioned on less visible roofs. Digital technology introduces unprecedented transformation. Computers enter the library. Manuscripts are digitized, allowing scholars worldwide to access high-resolution images without traveling physically. Archival preservation shifts from fragile parchment alone to electronic storage. Internet connectivity links cloistered life with global discourse. Email correspondence replaces handwritten letters for routine communication. Online databases support research into theology, history, and linguistics. Yet silence remains integral. Despite external connectivity, designated hours preserve contemplative quiet. Devices are set aside during communal prayer. The rhythm of bells persists, though accompanied now by subtle electronic chimes regulating schedules. Architectural conservation continues as both duty and privilege. Stone restoration employs modern materials designed to withstand pollution. Art historians collaborate with conservators to maintain frescoes threatened by humidity. Tourism increases steadily. Visitors from across continents walk through cloister arches, guided by informational plaques explaining centuries of adaptation. Revenue from these tours supports maintenance while introducing new challenges regarding privacy and sacred atmosphere. Interfaith dialogue emerges as another dimension of contemporary engagement. Conversations with representatives of Judaism, Islam, Buddhism, and other traditions take place within conference rooms once reserved solely for internal governance. Mutual respect replaces suspicion. Global crises such as climate change and pandemics influence monastic life. During widespread illness, gates close temporarily. Services are streamed online for distant participants. Community members adapt routines to ensure safety while preserving spiritual continuity. Agricultural land surrounding the monastery becomes a demonstration site for regenerative practices. Crop diversity increases. Soil health is monitored scientifically. Water conservation measures mitigate drought. Cultural heritage initiatives secure recognition of historic significance. Applications to organizations like UNESCO acknowledge architectural and historical value. Such designation brings international attention along with responsibility for preservation. The 21st century introduces both fragility and resilience. Population decline in rural areas contrasts with urban expansion. The monastery remains a steady presence amid demographic fluctuation. Young visitors seek silence as antidote to constant connectivity. Retreat programs emphasize reflection, manual labor, and shared meals. Ancient chants resonate through speakers when necessary, yet live voices continue to carry primary meaning. Historical memory accumulates layer upon layer. Romanesque foundations support Gothic arches, which in turn hold Baroque altars and modern electrical wiring. Each era leaves marks without erasing predecessors entirely. Scholarship within the library becomes increasingly interdisciplinary. Environmental ethics intersects with theology. Neuroscience dialogues with contemplative practice. Historical research re-examines archival documents through digital analysis. The monastery stands as living palimpsest. Its stones bear scars of conflict and restoration. Its gardens reflect centuries of experimentation. Its archives preserve voices from parchment to pixel. Even as society accelerates, the cadence within cloister walls retains deliberate pacing. Morning light still filters through windows, illuminating dust motes suspended in still air. Footsteps echo softly along corridors worn smooth by countless predecessors. The bell continues to mark transitions, its tone blending ancient metallurgy with modern acoustic surroundings. Across centuries, continuity does not imply stagnation. Adaptation unfolds gradually, guided by discernment rather than impulse. The monastery absorbs transformation while maintaining core orientation toward contemplation and service. As evening descends once more, the courtyard settles into shadow framed by stone arcades shaped across eras. Candles may now stand beside discreet electric lamps, yet flame persists as symbol of watchfulness. Outside, distant traffic hums where once only wind moved through fields. Above, stars remain unchanged despite telescopic insight. Within these walls, generations have come and gone, leaving traces in architecture, manuscripts, and memory. Dawn in the present century carries a different quality of light, sharpened by cleaner glass and subtly filtered through climate-conscious renovations. Triple-paned windows insulate against winter chill, yet the geometry of the cloister remains intact. Beneath restored arcades, stone flags hold faint impressions of centuries of passage, their surfaces smoothed into gentle undulations that no modern mason attempts to erase. Beyond monastery grounds, the rural region has shifted once again. Small family farms have consolidated into larger agricultural enterprises. Tractors equipped with satellite navigation move in precise lines across expansive fields. Drones occasionally pass overhead, surveying crop health through multispectral imaging. The monastery observes these developments with measured interest, noting efficiency while preserving its own smaller-scale cultivation. Within the refectory, meals incorporate produce grown in raised beds constructed according to permaculture design. Composting systems operate discreetly behind the orchard, transforming organic waste into fertile soil. Rainwater collection channels guide runoff from tiled roofs into underground cisterns lined with modern sealing compounds that prevent leakage. Renewable energy now hums softly near the outer wall. A row of solar panels, angled carefully to avoid visual disruption, convert sunlight into electricity powering library climate control. Batteries store excess capacity for evening use. Engineers consulted with art historians to ensure installations do not intrude upon historic site lines. Inside the archive, environmental monitoring devices track humidity and temperature continuously. Sensors transmit data to a central console, alerting caretakers to fluctuations that might threaten fragile manuscripts. Preservation now depends as much on digital dashboards as on vigilance by eye and touch. Scholars from international universities arrive periodically for collaborative research. Laptops rest upon oak tables once used exclusively for handwritten copying. High-resolution scanners capture details invisible to earlier generations. Paleographers compare ink composition through chemical analysis, revealing trade networks embedded within pigment traces. The monastery's website presents schedules for retreats, academic conferences, and seasonal liturgies. Online registration systems replace handwritten guest ledgers. Yet physical books remain available at reception, allowing visitors to inscribe names in flowing script should they prefer. Urban expansion has approached the outskirts of nearby towns. Residential developments cluster along former farmland. Highways curve closer than in past centuries, their steady murmur audible on still evenings. Despite proximity, the cloistered courtyard retains a surprising pocket of quiet shaped by thick masonry and deliberate landscaping. Trees planted decades earlier now form a protective canopy. Native species selected for resilience to changing climate provide shade during increasingly hot summers. Botanists consult with monastic gardeners to introduce drought-tolerant varieties while preserving historical continuity. Educational outreach evolves alongside digital literacy. Webinars connect monastic scholars with students across continents. Virtual tours guide viewers through vaulted corridors without requiring physical travel. Archival materials once accessible only to specialists are now available to broader audiences through curated online exhibitions. Contemplative practice adapts subtly to contemporary challenges. Retreat ants arrive burdened by information overload rather than physical hardship. Schedules include periods for silent walking, manual craft, and guided meditation. Simple tasks, kneading bread, binding a small notebook, offer grounding experiences in tactile reality. Healthcare within the community integrates traditional and modern approaches. Local physicians conduct periodic examinations. Preventative screenings are scheduled through regional hospitals. At the same time, herbal teas prepared from monastery gardens continue to soothe minor ailments. Climate variability introduces new considerations. Unseasonal storms bring intense rainfall. Drainage systems upgraded with permeable paving mitigate flooding risk. During prolonged heat waves, shaded arcades provide refuge. Stone walls, once designed for defense, now offer thermal stability. Artistic expression flourishes through contemporary mediums. A resident monk trained in photography documents seasonal transformation, capturing frost-laced branches against ancient stone. Digital prints hang temporarily within gallery spaces created from former storage rooms. Music incorporates both historic chant and carefully composed modern works. Composers influenced by minimalist aesthetics create pieces that resonate within resonant vaults. Recordings distributed online extend auditory presence beyond physical confines. Interdisciplinary dialogue continues to deepen. Environmental scientists collaborate on biodiversity studies within monastery lands. Sociologists analyze the role of contemplative communities in secular societies. Psychologists examine effects of silence on cognitive restoration. The library hosts symposia addressing ethical implications of artificial intelligence. Participants explore questions regarding technology, agency, and moral responsibility. Monastic tradition contributes perspectives shaped by centuries of reflection on intention and discipline. Culinary practices evolve modestly. Dietary considerations include sustainability and health research. Plant-based meals appear more frequently, reflecting ecological awareness. Honey harvested from monastery hives remains a cherished staple. Cultural diversity within retreat groups increases. Visitors represent varied backgrounds, professions, and belief systems. Shared silence creates unexpected solidarity transcending language barriers. Architectural conservation remains ongoing. Laser scanning generates precise three-dimensional models of structural elements. These digital archives safeguard information in case of unforeseen damage. Restoration projects employ limestone sourced from original quarries whenever feasible. Global networks connect contemplative houses worldwide. Virtual gatherings allow exchange between communities separated by oceans. Shared liturgical events synchronize across time zones, creating a dispersed yet unified rhythm. The monastery engages in humanitarian outreach discreetly. Partnerships with organizations addressing food insecurity channel surplus produce to urban shelters. Educational scholarships support students pursuing ethical leadership. Modern transportation enables brief pilgrimages. Travelers arrive by electric vehicle or train rather than horse or carriage. Bicycle racks stand near the entrance, reflecting contemporary mobility choices. During global health crises, protocols are implemented swiftly. Masks, distancing measures, and vaccination campaigns reshape communal life temporarily. Online streaming ensures continuity of prayer participation for those unable to attend physically. The psychological landscape of visitors differs markedly from medieval pilgrims. Concerns center on burnout, digital fatigue, and fragmented attention. Retreat programs emphasize deep listening, breath awareness, and intentional detachment from constant connectivity. Within the scriptorium, a small group revives calligraphy as meditative craft. Hand-cut quills glide across handmade paper produced from recycled cotton fibers. Workshops teach patience through deliberate stroke formation. Nighttime illumination has shifted. LED fixtures calibrated to warm color temperatures mimic candlelight while conserving energy. Exterior lighting remains minimal to preserve dark sky conditions, allowing constellations to appear vividly above tiled roofs. Ecological corridors established on monastery land support wildlife migration. Native grasses attract pollinators. Birdhouses installed discreetly beneath eaves provide nesting space. Environmental stewardship becomes integrated expression of spiritual commitment. Contemporary art installations occasionally occupy temporary exhibition spaces. Sculptures crafted from reclaimed metal engage themes of transformation and resilience. Curators ensure dialogue between modern expression and ancient architecture remains respectful. Community governance incorporates digital record keeping. Secure servers store minutes of meetings and financial statements. Cybersecurity measures protect sensitive information. Training sessions educate members about responsible technology use. The monastery participates in regional cultural festivals. Concerts, lectures, and artisan markets invite neighbors to engage with historic grounds. Revenue supports ongoing maintenance while fostering goodwill. Mental health awareness shapes pastoral care. Counseling resources are offered to retreatants experiencing anxiety or grief. Partnerships with licensed professionals ensure appropriate support. Language study continues as global engagement expands. Members learn modern tongues to facilitate communication with international guests. Translation software assists, though personal effort remains valued. Sustainable forestry management guides care of surrounding woodland. Selective thinning promotes biodiversity. Fallen timber is repurposed for carpentry workshops, crafting benches, and small devotional objects. Seasonal cycles remain foundational. Despite technological transformation, planting and harvest continue to structure communal awareness. Apple pressing in autumn fills the courtyard with sweet fragrance. Winter pruning prepares orchards for renewal. Archival research uncovers overlooked narratives. Documents reveal contributions by lay workers, artisans, and benefactors previously unnamed in official chronicles. Exhibitions highlight these diverse stories. Global events continue to ripple through monastic awareness. Economic shifts influence donations. International conflicts prompt intercessory prayer and humanitarian fundraising. The monastery remains attentive yet grounded. The soundscape reflects layered history. Bells cast centuries earlier resonate alongside distant highway traffic and occasional aircraft overhead. Wind carries scents of earth, stone, and flowering herbs. As twilight settles once again, silhouettes of solar panels blend with rooflines shaped long ago. Digital servers hum quietly in climate-controlled rooms below ground. Candles flicker before icons restored through modern conservation science. The monastery inhabits a paradoxical moment, rooted in origins that predate modern nation-states, yet fully present within a networked world. Human faces gathered in choir stalls represent multiple generations shaped by diverse experiences. Some recall pre-digital childhoods, others have never known life without screens. Stillness descends during evening prayer. Breath aligns with ancient cadence. Outside, satellites orbit silently overhead, invisible yet influential. Inside, attention narrows toward interior awareness. Centuries have layered upon these stones, each era inscribing marks of uncertainty and hope. The monastery persists not as relic, but as living organism adapting to conditions unimaginable to its founders. Night deepens gradually. Stars gleam above rooftops equipped with technology undreamed of in earlier ages. Within thick walls, quiet endures. Morning mist gathers low along the outer meadow, drifting in pale ribbons between ancient boundary stones and newly planted hedgerows. Moisture settles on spider webs stretched between lavender stems, each thread holding a precise constellation of droplets. The air carries a faint mineral scent rising from damp earth warmed slowly by first light. Beyond the monastery's immediate grounds, demographic patterns continue to shift. Young professionals increasingly migrate toward metropolitan centers shaped by glass towers and high-speed transit systems. Rural villages experience fluctuating populations, some houses converted into seasonal residences, others left unoccupied. In response, regional planners collaborate with agricultural cooperatives to sustain local economies through diversified crops and heritage tourism. The monastery participates indirectly in this rural renewal. Workshops on traditional bread baking and cheese aging draw visitors interested in artisanal methods. Stone ovens refurbished with modern insulation retain heat efficiently while preserving ancestral technique. The tactile rhythm of kneading dough reconnects participants with sensory awareness often diminished by mechanized food production. Inside the archival wing, a new project begins to catalog centuries of correspondence related to land stewardship. Graduate researchers transcribe fading ink into searchable databases. Marginalia once overlooked reveal nuanced observations about weather cycles, pest infestations, and soil fatigue. Patterns emerge across decades, offering insight into long-term environmental change. This data attracts collaboration with climatologists studying historical variability. Tree ring samples extracted from timber beams provide chronological records extending back hundreds of years. Combined with written accounts of drought or frost, these samples contribute to broader climate reconstruction models. Meanwhile, the monastery's guesthouse adapts to contemporary expectations of accessibility. Ramps are integrated discreetly along pathways once navigable only by foot. Handrails fashioned from wrought iron echo earlier craftsmanship while meeting modern safety standards. Guest rooms include quiet corners designed for reflection without digital distraction. Art restoration continues in less visible spaces. Under layers of 19th-century paint, conservators uncover fragments of earlier frescoes depicting agricultural scenes rather than purely devotional imagery. These images suggest a long-standing reverence for labor intertwined with prayer. Scholars analyze pigments using spectrometry, identifying minerals sourced from quarries long since abandoned. Such discoveries prompt renewed interest in regional trade networks of past centuries. Seasonal festivals on monastery grounds now incorporate ecological themes. Children from nearby schools participate in tree planting ceremonies. Educational panels explain carbon sequestration and watershed protection. Bells ring not only for liturgical hours but to mark communal commitments to environmental care. In the library's quiet alcoves, digital tablets rest beside bound folios. Researchers toggle between medieval commentary and contemporary peer-reviewed journals. Intellectual continuity extends across media formats without diminishing reverence for either. An international residency program invites writers and artists seeking contemplative space. Residency studios occupy former granaries where sunlight filters through high windows. Creative work unfolds alongside communal meals, fostering subtle exchange between disciplines. The surrounding forest becomes site of biodiversity study. Camera traps capture images of nocturnal wildlife returning after decades of decline. Foxes, badgers, and owls reappear with increasing frequency. Data collected informs conservation strategies extending beyond monastery property. Water management infrastructure undergoes further refinement. Constructed wetlands filter runoff naturally before it enters nearby streams. Native reeds stabilize banks while providing habitat for amphibians. Ecologists collaborate to balance human use with ecosystem resilience. Within the chapel, acousticians conduct research on sound resonance. Microphones placed strategically analyze frequency distribution beneath vaulted ceilings. Findings influence composition of new choral works tailored specifically to the building's acoustic character. Monastic attire adapts subtly to modern textile production. Robes woven from sustainable fibers offer durability and comfort while respecting tradition. Workshops demonstrate natural dye techniques revived from archival recipes. Civic leaders occasionally request use of conference spaces for ethical consultations. Discussions address topics such as equitable resource distribution, refugee support, and technological governance. The monastery offers neutral ground conducive to thoughtful deliberation. During periods of global economic uncertainty, financial stewardship becomes critical. Endowment funds are managed with cautious diversification. Transparent reporting builds trust with donors. Agricultural self-sufficiency remains strategic buffer against volatility. Educational outreach expands through partnerships with universities in cities such as Berlin and Toronto. Exchange programs bring students to study historical manuscripts firsthand. Reciprocal lectures connect monastic scholars with urban academic communities. Architectural lighting design evolves further. Subtle ground-level illumination highlights stone textures during evening events without contributing to light pollution. Motion sensors reduce unnecessary energy use. The monastery also becomes site for archaeological survey. Ground-penetrating radar reveals foundations of earlier structures predating existing walls. Excavations uncover fragments of pottery, iron tools, and remnants of a small chapel lost to fire centuries ago. These discoveries reshape understanding of the site's earliest phases. Historians integrate findings into updated narratives shared through guided tours and scholarly publications. Mental health retreats gain prominence. Participants engage in structured silence interspersed with nature immersion. Forest bathing sessions encourage attentive observation of bark texture, bird calls, and shifting cloud formations. Culinary gardens diversify to include heritage grains. Ancient varieties of wheat once nearly extinct are cultivated in experimental plots. Milling demonstrations reveal flavor differences compared to industrial strains. The monastery's publishing initiative releases small volumes exploring contemplative ecology, ethics of technology, and historical resilience. Print runs remain modest, yet digital editions reach global readership. Artisans revive traditional woodworking techniques. Handcrafted furniture produced in the workshop furnishes guest rooms. Joinery methods emphasize durability without reliance on synthetic adhesives. Sustainability audits conducted by external consultants assess carbon footprint. Recommendations lead to further efficiency improvements, improved insulation in attics, transition to electric vehicles for necessary transport. Cultural programming includes lectures on comparative spirituality. Scholars examine parallels between monastic silence and meditative practices in other traditions. Respectful exchange deepens mutual understanding. Night sky observation events draw astronomy enthusiasts. Telescopes set up in the meadow allow viewing of planetary alignments. Reflection on cosmic scale complements interior contemplation. The monastery maintains careful archival documentation of its own modern evolution. Annual reports include photographs, financial summaries, and ecological metrics. Future historians will encounter a richly detailed record of adaptation during early 21st century. Art therapy workshops utilize cloister spaces. Participants paint, sculpt, or write poetry inspired by stone corridors and garden scents. Creative expression becomes pathway toward healing. Local farmers collaborate on seed-saving initiatives. Shared storage facilities preserve genetic diversity of crops suited to regional climate. Workshops teach techniques for long-term viability. A small museum room curated within former cellar space displays artifacts spanning centuries, fragments of medieval tiles, early printed books, 20th-century ration cards, and contemporary solar inverter components. Visitors encounter continuity embodied in objects once purely functional. Digital privacy policies ensure respectful handling of online participant data. Ethical frameworks guide use of technology within communal life. Periodic silent days remain integral. No scheduled events, no external communication beyond essentials. Wind moves through trees uninterrupted by conversation. Such days reinforce foundational orientation. Emergency preparedness plans are updated. Fire suppression systems installed discreetly protect library collections. Training sessions instruct members in crisis response without undermining serenity. Research into contemplative neuroscience attracts collaboration with medical institutes. Studies explore correlations between sustained silence and stress reduction. Findings are shared cautiously, avoiding sensationalism. Artistic residencies culminate in public exhibitions blending sound, light, and narrative. Installations respond to architectural contours, creating immersive experiences respectful of sacred context. The monastery's agricultural land hosts experimental plots testing regenerative grazing patterns. Sheep move rotationally through designated sections, enriching soil naturally. Publications emerging from these experiments contribute to sustainable farming discourse. As seasons continue their measured progression, the community adapts to both opportunity and constraint. Economic pressures require creative fundraising. Cultural relevance demands thoughtful engagement without compromising identity. Evening settles once more over meadow and cloister. Electric systems dim gradually according to programmed cycles aligned with circadian research. Candles remain available for those preferring flame. Above, satellites trace invisible arcs across atmosphere shaped by technological ambition. Below, stone corridors carry faint echoes of footfall. The monastery stands within layered realities: agrarian past, industrial transformation, digital present, and uncertain future. Each generation leaves imprints not of dominance but of stewardship. Breath rises and falls within ancient walls strengthened by modern engineering. Quiet endures not as withdrawal from the world, but as attentive presence within it. The rhythm persists, unfolding gently into horizons yet uncharted, sustained by continuity shaped through centuries of patient adaptation. Winter arrives later than it once did, yet when cold finally settles across the valley, frost still outlines the edges of every stone. The outer pond forms a thin glaze of ice, fragile yet luminous beneath pale sunlight. Reeds along the banks bow slightly under crystalline weight. Breath becomes visible again during early walks, marking the boundary between interior warmth and open air. Inside the monastery, seasonal adjustments unfold with quiet precision. Heavy curtains woven from natural fibers are drawn across draft-prone archways at night. Floor coverings made in the workshop soften footsteps against chilled stone. The kitchen hearth regains prominence, not only for cooking but as a subtle center of gravity during darker months. The surrounding region faces shifting economic currents. Remote work has altered patterns of habitation. Some former urban residents now settle in rural areas, bringing digital professions into landscapes once defined solely by agriculture. Fiber optic cables run discreetly along roadsides, delivering high-speed connectivity to villages that previously relied on limited infrastructure. The monastery observes this transformation with measured attentiveness. Retreat ants increasingly arrive seeking boundaries between productivity and presence. Workshops addressing mindful engagement with technology fill quickly. Participants explore disciplined scheduling, intentional device use, and deliberate intervals of disconnection. Archival efforts expand into oral history. Elder members record recollections of 20th century upheavals, agricultural transitions, and early digital adoption. Audio files are stored alongside scanned manuscripts, preserving voice as well as text. In collaboration with regional historians, the monastery hosts a symposium examining rural depopulation and cultural continuity. Sociologists present data visualizations mapping demographic shifts. Agricultural experts discuss cooperative models sustaining small-scale farming. Artists contribute installations reflecting memory embedded in landscape. Snowfall deepens silence in ways distinct from earlier centuries. Where once only wind moved across fields, now the distant hum of insulated homes persists faintly. Even so, snowfall muffles modern sounds sufficiently to evoke earlier eras. Icicles hang from eaves restored with contemporary sealants invisible to casual observers. Within the chapel, new stained glass panels commissioned from a contemporary artisan complement medieval fragments. Abstract designs incorporate motifs of seeds, circuits, rivers, and constellations, symbols bridging agrarian and digital identities. Colored light pools across pews during late afternoon, casting transient patterns that shift minute by minute. Environmental monitoring extends beyond internal preservation. Weather stations positioned at the edge of monastery property record temperature, humidity, and precipitation. Data contributes to regional climate research networks. Longitudinal comparison with medieval agricultural records enriches scientific understanding of gradual change. The orchard yields less predictably due to fluctuating frost cycles. Horticulturalists experiment with resilient cultivars derived from heirloom varieties. Grafting techniques blend genetic lines, sustaining flavor profiles associated with earlier harvests. Educational programming incorporates apprenticeship opportunities. Young adults learn masonry repair using lime mortar rather than modern cement, preserving breathability of historic walls. Carpentry trainees practice traditional joinery alongside computer-aided design, merging craft and technology. An expanded digital humanities initiative begins cataloging marginal illustrations previously unclassified. Algorithms assist in pattern recognition, identifying recurring motifs across centuries. Yet final interpretation remains human, guided by contextual knowledge and aesthetic sensitivity. International partnerships deepen. Monastic communities in regions affected by rising sea levels share adaptation strategies. Coastal houses describe relocation of archives to higher ground. Inland monasteries exchange insights regarding water conservation. Public lectures address ethical consumption and supply chain transparency. Scholars analyze historical trade records to illuminate parallels with contemporary global commerce. Participants examine the balance between economic necessity and moral accountability. Seasonal liturgies incorporate multilingual readings reflecting diverse retreat ants. Chant resonates alongside languages rarely heard within these walls during earlier centuries. Acoustics accommodate variation without disruption. The monastery's small apiary becomes site of scientific collaboration. Entomologists study pollinator behavior within pesticide-free zones. Findings influence broader agricultural practices in the region. Art conservation continues in subterranean chambers. Humidity stabilization prevents deterioration of parchment maps once hand-drawn to depict spiritual cosmology. Digital reproductions allow interactive exploration without handling fragile originals. A contemplative walking trail is established through adjacent woodland. Interpretive markers provide historical context, locations of former charcoal pits, remnants of medieval boundary markers, traces of World War encampments long reclaimed by moss. Mindfulness research expands into studies of intergenerational resilience. Psychologists analyze how structured daily rhythms influence emotional regulation. Retreat participants contribute anonymized feedback informing future programming. Energy systems undergo further refinement. Geothermal heating supplements solar arrays, reducing dependence on external grids. Installation occurs carefully to avoid disturbance of archaeological layers identified in earlier surveys. The monastery publishes a quarterly journal examining intersections of ecology, spirituality, and technology. Essays explore themes ranging from soil microbiomes to contemplative ethics in artificial intelligence design. Cultural festivals integrate digital projection art mapped onto cloister walls. Images depict evolving landscapes across centuries, forests advancing and receding, fields subdivided and consolidated, roofs restored after conflict. Food preservation techniques expand. Fermentation workshops revive ancient practices adapted for modern nutritional understanding. Stone cellars maintain stable temperature for aging produce. In times of regional drought, water-sharing agreements are established with neighboring farms. Collective stewardship reinforces community bonds beyond monastic boundaries. The guesthouse library includes shelves dedicated to contemporary literature exploring solitude in an era of constant communication. Visitors encounter narratives reflecting parallel searches for balance. Seasonal migrations of birds draw ornithologists to monastery grounds. Observation blinds constructed from natural materials allow quiet study without disturbance. Digital infrastructure receives periodic upgrades. Cybersecurity audits protect archival databases from intrusion. Ethical guidelines govern data sharing with academic partners. Local schools incorporate monastery visits into curriculum focused on heritage preservation. Students sketch architectural details, learning geometry through observation of arches and columns. Winter evenings invite deeper interior focus. Candles placed within alcoves flicker beside discreet emergency lighting. Shadows shift along carved capitals depicting vines and mythical creatures. The monastery contemplates future succession planning. Younger members receive mentorship in governance, finance, and pastoral care. Transparent leadership transitions ensure continuity. Environmental art installations appear briefly in meadow clearings. Temporary sculptures constructed from fallen branches emphasize impermanence and renewal. The kitchen experiments with heritage legumes rediscovered in archival seed catalogs. Flavor profiles connect present meals with medieval tables once set in the same refectory space. Digital archives incorporate immersive virtual reality models. Remote scholars navigate three-dimensional reconstructions of early architectural phases, observing structural evolution layer by layer. Interdisciplinary retreats address bioethics. Medical professionals reflect on end-of-life care within contemplative frameworks. Legal scholars examine evolving policies. Economic sustainability remains ongoing concern. Small-scale craft sales, hand-bound journals, herbal salves, beeswax candles support operational expenses without commercial excess. As spring approaches once more, Tho releases the pond from its icy surface. Waterfall return, tracing arcs above reflective water. Mud along pathways signals renewal rather than hardship. The monastery stands within a world simultaneously fragile and innovative. Technological acceleration continues beyond its gates, quantum computing research, space exploration missions, global communications networks linking billions instantly. Within, human attention remains finite and deliberate. Morning bells resonate through air carrying both centuries-old metal and contemporary amplification equipment calibrated for clarity without intrusion. Stone warmed by afternoon sun radiates stored heat into evening. Visitors depart carrying experiences shaped by silence, craftsmanship, and thoughtful engagement. Researchers publish findings derived from archival collaboration. Gardeners prepare soil once more, adjusting planting schedules in response to shifting climate data. The monastery's identity persists not as static relic but as responsive presence, anchored in tradition yet attentive to unfolding reality. Twilight settles across meadow and cloister. Light refracts through stained glass depicting seeds and stars. Solar batteries charge quietly for nocturnal use. Footsteps echo softly along corridors shaped by countless predecessors. Beyond the horizon, satellites glide unseen through upper atmosphere. Closer at hand, wind brushes treetops planted by hands long gone. Time advances steadily. Within these walls, measured rhythm endures, adaptable, reflective, grounded in attentive awareness of both ancient stone and evolving world.